Welcome to the Prescott Lab Podcast, not just theory, practical science for everyone. I'm Dr. Jonathan Prescott, a physician and integrative medicine researcher at the Ravenshade Institute for Human Health. Picture this, gentlemen, it's the dead of night. The house is still, the only sound is the slow tick of the clock, yet you're awake, staring into the dark. Not because you want to be, but because nature has called you out of bed again. Maybe for the third time tonight. The hallway feels longer than it should, the bathroom light harsher. And by morning, you're running on half the rest you need, dragging yourself into a day that feels heavier than it used to. Now imagine the same night a few weeks from now. The same bed, the same clock, but this time you sleep through until sunrise. You open your eyes and realize your body feels calmer, lighter. You're not rushing to the bathroom. You're standing at the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee, knowing the day is yours again. And what changed wasn't a new pill, a surgery, or a strict routine. It was a quiet, everyday choice that started right on your breakfast plate. As a doctor, I've seen how the smallest adjustments can turn into the biggest wins, especially for man's prostate. The right kind of bread isn't just food. It's fuel your body knows how to use, to calm inflammation, steady hormone balance, and keep blood moving smoothly where it's needed most. The wrong kind, on the other hand, works against you in silence, feeding the very problems you've been trying to fix. Before we go further, if you haven't subscribed yet, take a second to do it and tap that like button. Not because we're counting clicks, but because every single one tells us this work matters, and it's what keeps my team digging deeper, bringing you more science you can actually use. In a moment, I'm going to tell you about a particular bread that's been quietly changing the nights and mornings of men in their 60s and 70s across the country. It's not flashy, it's not expensive. But once you know why it works, you may never look at your breakfast the same way again. One flaxseed bread, tiny seeds, big power. I can still remember the look on Walter's face the first time I brought it up. He's 71, a retired machinist from Ohio, the kind of man whose hands still carry the weight of a lifetime's work. He leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, and said with a half smile, "Doc, I'm not a bird, I don't eat seeds." We both laughed, but I could see the weariness in his eyes. Years of restless nights, the constant mental calculation of where the nearest restroom would be, the quiet frustration of feeling like his body was making decisions he hadn't agreed to. So I told him the truth, these aren't just any seeds. They're one of nature's oldest, most powerful tools for man's health and his prostate. Here's why. Flax seeds are loaded with lignans, plant compounds that work like subtle traffic cops for your hormones. As men age, testosterone can slip lower, while estrogen quietly edges higher. That shift doesn't just affect mood or energy, it's one of the silent forces behind an enlarging prostate. Lignans help restore a healthier balance, supporting testosterone where you need it and limiting estrogen's sway over prostate tissue. Then there's the omega-3 fatty acids, the same anti-inflammatory fats you've heard about in fish oil, but in a plant-based form your body can use every day. Inflammation is the quiet arsonist here, swelling the prostate tissue and narrowing the channel that carries your urine. Omega-3s work like a steady rain on that slow-burning fire, calming irritation and allowing things to move freely again. And we can't forget the fiber, both soluble and insoluble. Soluble fiber steadies blood sugar, keeping the inflammatory spikes low. Insoluble fiber keeps digestion moving, so your body isn't dealing with the extra pressure that constipation can put on the bladder and prostate. It's a combination that eases strain on multiple fronts at once. When Walter agreed to try it, we kept it simple. 2 slices of whole grain bread baked with freshly ground flaxseed, a drizzle of olive oil, and a few slices of ripe tomato. He called me after the first week, almost suspicious. "Doc, I only got up once last night, thought it was a fluke, but it's been 3 nights in a row now." By the third week, he was sleeping through until morning more nights than not. His wife told me he was smiling more, had more patience, and even started working on the old motorcycle in the garage again. The science explained his results, but living it, that's what changed him. See, ground flaxseed is the key. Whole seeds can pass through you without breaking down, but ground seeds release every bit of lignin, omega-3, and fiber for your body to use. And when those nutrients are at work day after day, the changes don't just happen in the bathroom. Men often notice steadier energy, a lighter mood, and yes, more confidence where it counts. It's not a magic bullet. It's a quiet ally, one that works best when it shows up on your plate regularly, not just once in a while. And while flaxseed brings its own kind of power, there's another bread that works in a way most men never expect. One that doesn't just calm what's already inflamed, but helps the body absorb the very minerals the prostate depends on. 2. Oat Bran Bread, the gentle giant. Eugene was 75 when he first sat across from me, his cane leaning against the chair, his voice low but steady. "Doc," he said, "I can deal with the aches. I can deal with getting older, but I'm tired of feeling like my nights aren't mine anymore." For years, he'd been waking every couple of hours, shuffling down the hallway in the dark, then lying awake long after, staring at the ceiling. He'd tried medication, herbal teas, even cutting off fluids. By mid-afternoon, nothing lasted. That's when I told him about something deceptively simple, not a supplement, not a treatment, but a kind of bread built from the outer shell of the oat grain. Oat bran. See, the magic of oat bran lies in beta-glucans, a special type of soluble fiber that does far more than help digestion. Beta-glucans have the unique ability to lower cholesterol, improve blood flow, and reduce inflammation all at once. For the prostate, that's a triple win. Better circulation means more oxygen and nutrients reaching the tissue, less inflammation means less swelling around the urinary channel, and healthier cholesterol keeps the blood vessels supplying the pelvic area open and flexible. When Eugene made the switch, we started small, one slice of oat bran bread in the morning, lightly toasted with avocado and a pinch of black pepper. Within 3 weeks, he told me something I'll never forget. "It feels like someone turned the volume down in my body. I'm not rushing to the bathroom every hour. I feel quieter inside." And there's more science behind that calm. A healthy digestive system takes pressure off the bladder and prostate. Constipation, often overlooked, can press on the urinary tract and make symptoms worse. Oat bran's high fiber keeps everything moving comfortably, freeing the prostate from that extra strain. And because oat bran digests slowly, it keeps blood sugar levels steady, avoiding the inflammatory surges that can silently aggravate the gland. The flavor, mild, slightly nutty, the kind of taste that works with almost anything. Some of my patients enjoy it with tuna and cucumber for lunch, others pair it with scrambled eggs for a hearty breakfast. But the real benefit doesn't come from the taste alone, it comes from the consistency. Oat bran works quietly day after day, building a foundation your prostate can depend on. For Eugene, the change didn't just mean better nights. It meant waking up with more energy, walking to the park without scouting every bench near a restroom, and starting to believe that at 75, his best mornings might still be ahead of him. And while oat bran is the gentle giant working steadily in the background, there's another bread with a darker, earthier character. One whose strength comes from an ancient grain and the way it can help steady the very hormones that keep a man's prostate from growing larger. 3. 100% Whole Rye Bread, the dark, dense hero. Martin was 72 when he walked into my office, tall but moving a little slower than his frame suggested he once could. He had that farmer's handshake, strong, dry, and honest. "Doc," he said with a wry smile, "I'm tired of planning my life around bathrooms. I just want to make it through the night without 3 interruptions." I told him we weren't going to start with pills. Instead, I handed him something that felt heavier than he expected, a loaf of dark, dense bread. "Rye," I said. He raised an eyebrow like I just suggested eating a brick. But here's the thing about 100% whole rye bread. It's not the soft, fluffy white bread most of us grew up with. It's built from the entire rye grain, bran, germ, and endosperm intact. That means every bite is loaded with fiber, micronutrients, and plant compounds your prostate can actually use. One of rye's secret weapons is lignans, the same hormone-balancing compounds found in flax but in a different profile. For men, that matters. As we age, the ratio of testosterone to estrogen can tilt in ways that encourage prostate tissue to grow. Lignans help nudge that balance back, keeping the gland calmer and less prone to swelling. Then there are the beta-glucans, rye's quiet anti-inflammatory force. Chronic low-grade inflammation in the urinary tract is like a constant background hum that wears you down. Beta-glucans lower that hum, giving the bladder and urethra room to work the way they should. Rye also has a low glycemic index, meaning it won't spike your blood sugar the way refined wheat does. Those spikes drive inflammation everywhere, including the prostate. Steadier blood sugar means a steadier, quieter gland. But here's the catch. Not all rye bread is really rye. The bread aisle is full of imposters, white bread dyed brown with caramel coloring and sprinkled with a little rye flour. The real thing will say 100% whole rye or whole rye flour first on the label. It should feel weighty in your hand. And if you can find a European-style rye or German pumpernickel made from whole rye kernels, that's even better, richer in the very compounds your prostate craves. Martin swapped his morning toast for 2 slices of real rye, topped with avocado and a dusting of sea salt. 2 weeks later, he was waking only once a night. After a month, he said, "Doc, I'm not just sleeping better, I feel like I've got more in the tank during the day." It wasn't magic. It was nutrition doing what it's meant to do quietly, consistently, and deeply. The truth is, when you give your body the right building blocks, it knows how to heal. And sometimes those building blocks come from grains that have been with us for centuries, grains that, when awakened, can unlock nutrients most breads will never touch. 4. Sprouted whole grain bread, the living loaf. Lawrence was 68, a retired postal worker from Oregon, when he first told me he'd given up hope of sleeping more than 2 hours straight. He'd tried medications, herbal remedies, even meditation before bed, but nothing seemed to quiet the constant urge. When I suggested sprouted whole grain bread, he looked at me like I just told him to eat grass from the lawn. "Bread's bread, Doc," he said. "How's that going to help my prostate?" That's when I explained that sprouted bread isn't ordinary bread at all. It's made from grains that have just begun to germinate, a stage where the grain quite literally wakes up. Inside, enzymes switch on, breaking down starches into simpler, more digestible sugars, turning dense proteins into amino acids your body can use immediately, and increasing vitamin content, especially vitamin E, B vitamins, and antioxidants. For the prostate, that's a big deal. Antioxidants protect the delicate cells of the gland from oxidative stress, the slow, invisible wear and tear that drives inflammation and tissue damage. More antioxidants mean more defense against the microscopic damage that fuels enlargement over time. Sprouting also reduces phytic acid, an anti-nutrient that blocks your body from absorbing minerals. Without sprouting, you can eat bread all day and still miss out on zinc and magnesium, 2 minerals the prostate relies on. Zinc helps regulate the growth of prostate cells, keeping the tissue in check. Magnesium eases inflammation and helps the muscles in the urinary tract relax, making urination smoother and less strained. When Lawrence swapped his usual loaf for sprouted whole grain bread, 1 slice with hummus in the morning, another with turkey and spinach at lunch, the changes were quiet at first. In a week, he was sleeping in longer stretches. In a month, the nightly bathroom trips had dropped from 6 to 2. "It's like my nights are mine again," he said, and for the first time in years, he started making plans to go fishing before sunrise. Sprouted bread is also gentler on digestion, which means less stress on the body overall. Its slow-digesting carbs keep blood sugar steady, preventing the inflammatory spikes that quietly irritate the prostate. And because of its hearty, nutty flavor, it pairs easily with savory or even lightly sweet toppings, making it a pleasure to eat rather than a chore. Not all sprouted breads are equal, though. The first ingredient should be sprouted whole grains, not refined flour with a few sprouts thrown in. Ezekiel bread is a common option, but many local bakeries also make excellent fresh sprouted loaves without preservatives. For Lawrence, the shift wasn't just in his nights. His days felt lighter, more focused. He told me, "It's not just about fewer trips to the bathroom, Doc. I feel like my mind's clearer, like I've got space to think again." And while sprouted grains unlock what's already inside, there's another ancient grain that adds something extra. A trace mineral that acts like armor for your prostate cells, shielding them from damage while keeping your energy steady from dawn to dusk. 5. Barley bread, ancient strength for modern men. Gerald was 69, a retired firefighter from Pennsylvania, the kind of man whose presence still carried the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades running toward danger. But in my office that morning, his voice was softer. "Doc," he said, "I can't keep doing this. I'm exhausted before the day even starts." His nights were broken, waking up 3-4 times, and the days were a blur of fatigue. Short walks and a constant dull pressure low in his pelvis. He tried the usual routes, medications, supplements, even reducing his evening fluids. Nothing stuck, so I handed him something humble, a loaf of barley bread. He looked at it skeptically, running his thumb over the crust. "Barley? My grandmother used to talk about it. Didn't think people still ate this stuff." Barley is one of the oldest cultivated grains, and like many ancient foods, it carries a quiet wisdom in its composition. It's rich in beta-glucans, the same soluble fiber found in oats and rye, known for lowering cholesterol, improving circulation, and calming inflammation, all vital for a healthier prostate. But barley has something extra: selenium. Selenium is a trace mineral that acts like a shield at the cellular level. It helps neutralize oxidative stress, the microscopic wear and tear that weakens cells and leaves them vulnerable to damage. Studies have shown that adequate selenium intake is linked with a reduced risk of prostate problems. For men like Gerald, this means giving the prostate the protection it needs to stay resilient as the years add up. Barley's slow-digesting nature also helps control blood sugar, avoiding the inflammatory surges that silently aggravate the gland. And because it helps you feel full longer, it supports weight management, an often overlooked factor in prostate health. Carrying excess weight, especially around the midsection, can increase pelvic pressure and disrupt hormone balance, both of which make symptoms worse. Gerald started with one slice of barley bread at lunch, topped with grilled vegetables and a drizzle of olive oil. Within 2 weeks, he noticed he was sleeping longer stretches. By the end of the first month, the pressure in his pelvis had eased, his energy was climbing, and he'd added an extra lap to his morning walk. "Feels like my engine's running cleaner," he told me. The flavor of real barley bread is hearty, with a subtle sweetness that works beautifully with savory toppings. But as with all grains, the quality matters. You want 100% whole barley or a blend where barley is the primary ingredient, not refined barley mixed with white flour. What struck me most about Gerald's progress wasn't just the change in his nights, but the way his days opened up again. He started meeting old friends for coffee, tinkering in his workshop, even planning a trip to the coast with his wife. And that's the truth about changes like these: they start quietly, with a choice so small it almost feels insignificant. But over time, they ripple outward, touching parts of your life you didn't realize were connected. When you combine these quiet allies on your plate, the effect isn't just additive, it's transformative. And in the final moments we share today, I want to show you how to bring them together into one simple, daily ritual that can help you reclaim your nights, your mornings, and your confidence. 6. Conclusion: the daily ritual that changes everything. Gentlemen, we've covered a lot together today. 5 breads, each with its own unique way of helping your prostate work with you instead of against you. Flaxseed balancing your hormones while calming inflammation. Oat Bran steadily lowering the silent pressures on your gland. Rye bringing its dark, dense strength to keep blood sugar stable and hormones in check. Sprouted grains unlocking minerals your prostate depends on. And barley, the old soldier, guarding your cells with selenium's protective shield. But here's what matters most: this isn't about bread for bread's sake. It's about what happens when you stop feeding the problem and start fueling the solution. When you replace the refined, nutrient-stripped loaves with these nutrient-rich choices, you're telling your body every single day, "I'm on your side." I've seen men who thought they were out of options, men worn down by restless nights and the constant need to plan their lives around the nearest restroom, transform by making this simple shift. Not overnight, not with a miracle pill, but with the quiet power of consistency. Picture this: you're waking up after a full night's rest, the morning light soft through the curtains. You stand, stretch, and realize there's no urgency, no discomfort. You make your breakfast without rushing, knowing the day ahead belongs to you, not your symptoms. And all because you decided to make a different choice at the grocery store and you kept making it. That's the beauty of this ritual. It doesn't demand you change everything about your life. Just one habit, one decision, repeated until it becomes part of you. The kind of change that sneaks up on you in the best way possible. If you've made it this far with me today, you're already proving something important: that your health matters to you and you're willing to learn. That's the kind of man I built this podcast for. So before we wrap up, if you haven't subscribed yet, take a moment to do it now. And tap that like button, not for vanity, but because every single like tells my team this matters, and it's what fuels us to keep bringing you practical, real-world science you can use. Share this episode with a friend, a brother, or a neighbor who could use it. You might be the reason they sleep peacefully for the first time in years. And I'd love to hear from you. What bread will you try first? Or if you've already made a change, what's been your result? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and your story might just be what inspires the next man to take that first step. So here's my wish for you: strong health, quiet nights, and mornings that feel like a fresh start. Keep taking those small, steady steps forward, because the life you want isn't gone. It's waiting.